The superhero genre can best be defined as pre and post Arkham Asylum. Before Asylum, most superhero games were either basic platformers, action games, or whatever Superman 64 was. If you're old enough to remember movie games like I am, think of them like that, soulless. As the years passed, mediocrity turned to expectations and expectations evolved into culture. I remember asking for some of these games as a kid, and they sure were something. As soon as we lost all hope, Warner Brothers recruited Rocksteady Studios, a mysterious new developer, to work on a Batman game, and given the track record of superhero games, expectations were pretty low. Combine superhero games' mediocre reputation with Warner Bros. And a studio no one's ever heard about, and it should have been awful. Fast forward to Arkham Asylum in 2009, and everything changed. Batman Arkham Asylum was a landmark title for superhero games because of its voice acting, groundbreaking combat system, grounded comic book story leveraging Batman's lore, semi-open explorable world packed with Easter eggs, haunting claustrophobic atmosphere, iconic boss battles, and how unexpected it was at the time. Its influence can still be felt almost 20 years later in the industry. While we look at Rocksteady a bit differently today, largely due to Warner Brothers' poor executive leadership, Arkham Asylum hurled them into the limelight and turned them into a household name. I wouldn't be shocked if fans at the time thought that this was the best superhero games could get, but Rocksteady shocked fans 2 years later with the sequel Batman Arkham City. If y'all want videos dedicated to Asylum and City, please let me know in the comments because I'd love to talk about these games as well. In the interest of time, let's just say Asylum to City was a colossal leap that no one was ready for. Arkham City delivered a ton of refinements to core systems and even more innovation. The innovation between titles led to critics and fans expecting generational leaps between Arkham titles, but Warner Brothers Montreal had a different approach with Arkham Origins. More on this in a bit though. These expectations divided the community with Arkham Origins released. Many criticized and still hold the sentiment that Warner Brothers Montreal didn't innovate enough within Rocksteady's established framework. Although referenced in Arkham Knight, Arkham Origins was excluded from the Batman Arkham Collection and has been viewed as the black sheep since launch. So you're probably asking yourself, why was this game greenlit in the first place? Well, between Rocksteady's development of Arkham City and Knight, Warner Brothers didn't want to wait and wanted more studios working on Batman projects. Since Arkham Knight took more than 3.5 years to develop, Warner Bros. Asked Warner Bros. Montreal if they could develop a game to make up for the drought, and Arkham Origins was born. Situations like these are a reminder that corporations prioritize return on investment. Instead of acknowledging Rocksteady as the unbelievably talented studio who discovered the superhero blueprint, let's just prioritize how much money they can make for us. Fun fact, Arkham Origins wasn't the first outsourced Batman game either. That honor and Warner Bros. Montreal's first Batman credit goes to Batman Arkham City Armored Edition for the Wii U. Like I said earlier, this game was heavily criticized back in the day. I think this quote from PC Gamer's review best sums up where we were at in 2013. The leap from Asylum to City was dramatic, if not entirely successful, but Origins is so similar to City, even repeating some moments verbatim, that it feels like a more elaborate expansion than a proper sequel. It's obvious Warner Bros. Wanted another Batman game on the shelves while Rocksteady worked on the next one, which makes the whole thing feel a bit cynical. Yearly sequels can bleed a great concept dry, and the Arkham series deserves better. This was the general sentiment for the game at the time, and the Metacritic score speaks for itself. At the time of its release, it was the most polarizing Arkham game. Fortunately for Origins fans like myself, the most hated mantle was passed on to Gotham Knights and now peacefully rests with Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League. Origins was blasted as a derivative sequel to Rocksteady's critically acclaimed City. The community complained about the marginal combat refinements, plethora of technical issues, a lack of meaningful systemic changes, writing another Joker story, heavily inspired boss fights, and because it was technically Arkham City's successor. And while everyone's entitled to their own opinions, Arkham Origins, even with its issues, has always been greater than the sum of its parts in my opinion. It's my most revisited and maybe favorite Arkham game. The best way to defend this game is to take it from the top, so let's discuss how this game aged graphically. Origins features a very similar art direction to Asylum. Since Asylum, the series has had this dark, cartoony, grounded realism aesthetic. I think the darker over-the-top aesthetic harmonizes with the darker atmosphere and mirrors the tone of Batman the Animated Series. The animated series is an easy parallel to draw given Paul Dini's involvement with the Arkham series. Pursuing realism traditionally has been a fruitless endeavor. Technology progressed too fast historically for graphics to stand the test of time. Things today are different since graphics have stagnated. I'm not saying that games in 2025 don't look better than games 10 years ago, but we'll probably never see a jump like from 1995 to 2005 ever again. Another thing that separates Origins from the rest of the series is this noticeable blue filter. Asylum features a faint green aesthetic embodying the psychological unease of the Asylum. City has this washed out grayish filter implying a more sinister tone, and Origins has a bluish filter harboring this jovial Christmas theme. This immediately stood out to me when I was younger and is one of the most striking parts of its overall art direction. I have no idea why filters were so common this generation, but it looks great, especially with snow-covered Gotham. The blue filter and snow really sell this Christmas Eve setting that Warner Bros. Montreal was going for. There's a level of warmth and comfort we get when looking at Gotham. This familiar beauty serves as a clear juxtaposition for the narrative's themes. I don't think Origins gets enough credit for its atmosphere, so I really wanted to highlight how brilliant it is from an artistic standpoint, and this artistic approach bleeds into other aspects of the game's overall presentation. Since Asylum, the Arkham games have leveraged CGI cutscenes. Asylum and City's cutscenes are deliberately grayer and more washed out, whereas Origins looks grittier and grainier. I think this approach was meant to elicit Bruce's early years as Batman. The cutscene's direction feels deliberate as the team wanted to stress Bruce's rough nature. As the name Arkham Origins states, this is the Arkham versus Batman's origin story, and Origins follows the night where Bruce finally understands who Batman is and his role as Gotham's protector. As the game progresses, Bruce goes too far when interrogating people, is more vicious with criminals, and he's less patient overall. Bruce's toughness and grittiness bleed into these cutscenes, and I think they're quite fitting given what the narrative's going for. Like I said earlier, it's a striking artistic choice that everyone may not enjoy, but I think it was an excellent method of portraying Batman's early years. Origins would go one step further, depicting Bruce's youth through providing him and the rest of the cast with new voice actors as well. When Warner Bros. Announced Kevin Conroy and Mark Hamill weren't returning to voice their iconic roles, I think everyone was justifiably angry. Kevin Conroy, rest in peace and thank you for everything you've done, and Mark Hamill are the definitive voices for Batman and the Joker, or at least they have been since 1992. Seeing these characters open their mouths and hearing their voices feel completely natural by now. I can't imagine the sense of awe growing up with Batman the Animated Series and hearing them reprise their roles in Arkham Asylum. I think it goes without saying, but there's no replacement for these two. However, with Kevin's passing, Mark Hamill retiring as the Joker, Batman being one of the biggest superheroes in the world, and, capitalism, new voices were inevitable. And truthfully, I think Warner Bros. Montreal did a great job recasting them. Roger Craig Smith was cast as Batman and Troy Baker was cast as the Joker. And these castings are still funny over a decade later. Roger Craig Smith has been famously known as the voice for Sonic the Hedgehog since Sonic Colors on the DS, and Troy Baker, well, he doesn't really need an intro. This man was literally everywhere during the 6th generation. If you don't believe me, and because we'd be here all day if I listed his roles, I'll have his Moby Games credits linked in the description below. Both voice actors were and continue to be incredibly talented individuals. They both received a lot of mixed reviews for their performance at the time, but I think they did a great job when looking back on it. While there's no replacing Kevin and Mark, different voice actors bring new interpretations to characters and the opportunity to explore different parts of them. A new interpretation of classic characters may find you appreciating something we've never thought about, and personally, I have no issues with different actors bringing something new to these roles. In the case of Arkham Origins, with Batman especially, I think there's a cool sense of meta progression here. Since Kevin has been Batman since the 90s, his voice has changed a lot over the years. The growth is evident when listening to his voice change between Season 1 of Batman the Animated Series to Justice League. His shift in tone feels like a natural sense of progression. It feels like Bruce is maturing and becoming more confident in his role as Gotham's protector until you hear his voice in Arkham Asylum. By the time Arkham Asylum occurs, Bruce was already a veteran Batman. There's implied history between him and the cast of villains, Barbara, several Robins, and even Gordon. Combine this with Kevin's mature delivery, and it's fair to assume that Arkham vs. Bruce has been Batman for a very long time. With this context in mind, enter Roger Craig Smith. Roger's delivery feels younger and more brash. His voice doesn't carry that veteran cadence that Kevin's does. It's a more meek and higher-pitched tone informing the audience that he's not entirely confident in what he's doing. There's an underlying sense of doubt and insecurity behind his words that don't live with Kevin's. Roger's delivery adds a level of vulnerability that we rarely see from Batman. Many of Batman's stories find him cool, calm, calculated, and collected. He's rarely surprised and always has a contingency plan. This Batman fits Kevin Conroy's voice perfectly, but as Bruce comes to terms with being Gotham's protector, Roger Craig Smith's voice feels like the logical starting point for Batman and Bruce. Knowing that this Batman transforms into this Batman makes sense and makes me really appreciate Roger's performance. Now, I could very well be reaching here, but if you think of this voice change as something done intentionally, it's a cool bit of character progression, in my opinion at least. And much of this praise can be extended to Troy Baker's take on the Joker. The Joker in this game, which we'll cover in depth later, was written to be especially raw, and Troy Baker ran with it. He's doing his best Mark Hamill impression, clearly. I think Troy did an exceptional job with the Joker, and I'm clearly not alone here. Since Arkham Origins, Kevin's passing, and Mark's retirement as the Joker, Warner Brothers has occasionally asked them to reprise their roles in future Batman-related projects. Although there's no replacing the originals, I'm happy the community has significantly softened up on these voices over the years. I'm clearly a big fan of both their works, but there's no replacing Kevin and Mark, so I understand anyone who's disappointed here. And since we're talking about disappointment, now's probably a good time to talk about the gameplay changes, or should I say the lack thereof. Arkham Origins dealt with the unfortunate reality of being Arkham City's successor. Following up Arkham City felt like an impossible challenge that Rocksteady arguably has yet to achieve. Many superhero games live in City's shadow to this day. When interviewed about the game at E3 2013, rest in peace, Arkham Origins director Eric Holmes praised Rocksteady's formula and combat system. When Origins was in development, Eric and the team endeavored to refine then reinvent, which resulted in Gotham getting a new borough, new equipment, Batwing fast travel, faster combat, new enemies, and a new method of unlocking abilities. Holmes' approach to this game begs the question of which you as a person prefer, refinement or innovation. Innovation is one of those words that people cavalierly use, and I get it. Everyone wants to be swept back to their childhoods where everything was new and fresh. The problem with this approach is that we don't celebrate all innovation properly. The term innovation typically yields a positive tone when it's actually a far more ambiguous word. In reality, innovation is done when a creative wants to experiment. A team has achieved everything they set out to do, they're exhausted, or their backs are to the wall. Reinventing a long-running franchise risks alienating longtime fans, potentially losing the IP's identity, or just being a bad idea. For every Resident Evil 4 out there, there's a Dead Space 3. Both titles are technically innovative, but one is universally praised, whereas the other is universally hated. Unless the community explicitly states their desires and comes to an agreement with the developer, asking for innovation is closer to a coin toss than an entirely positive venture. We have to accept that not all innovation is good. Additionally, innovation has an inherent time bias to it. Innovating 20 or 30 years ago was far less risky because mechanics, controls, technology, and budgets were far more juvenile. 20 or 30 years ago, we were still figuring out how to move cameras. Live service games didn't need to generate millions of dollars quarterly, and developers were encouraged to explore new concepts since they weren't shut down after a single game flopped. The game development environment 2 or 3 decades ago lent itself to exploration, which is the opposite of what happens today. Listen, I'm not one of the old guys that's like, oh yeah, everything was better back when I was a kid, but there were undeniably more risks taken in the 5th than the 8th generation of consoles. I think all this context is relevant since refinement has been the preferred source of investment compared to innovation. Where innovation carries a ton of risks, market research shows nostalgia and familiarity are far safer investments. Video games today are big business, and many AAA games are conceived in boardrooms. This conservative nature can be seen through the stagnation and homogenization we see in the industry today. The reason games, music, movies, and anime feel similar today is because they've been figured out. The difference between games today and games 2 or 3 decades ago are templates. Several years ago, you got away with throwing shit at the wall, whereas today, open world games need a map, side quests, X number of NPCs, fast travel, and the list goes on. There is little margin for innovation within the current AAA framework, which is why benign system adjustments like refinements are the preferred method of change. And all these reasons are why I'm largely apathetic to Holmes' approach to Arkham Origins. I don't blame Holmes and Warner Bros. Montreal for wanting to refine City's foundation. City was a groundbreaking title with DNA that can still be felt today. I think it makes sense why WB Montreal opted to refine the foundation rather than risking too many changes with their first major project. One of the immediate changes you'll feel is how Bruce moves into combat. Some of Bruce's interrogations end terribly, and some of his new moves are absolutely vicious. His actions carry this sense of vengeance to them, and Alfred even calls him out for this later. This aggression can be found in the updated combat system as well. Outside of a few new moves, enemies, and gloves, the combat is more or less the same. The biggest change you may feel is the tempo. Now, I don't really have a way to prove this outside of just the eye test, but I don't know, I've sat and thought about it, but this game just feels faster than Arkham City. I don't know if counter windows are smaller, free flow has been sped up, or the recovery on attacks has been reduced, but Origins, especially after you've unlocked everything, felt much faster than I remembered. I could be crazy though. I know it's faster, but I can't quite put my finger on specifically why. Other than the perceived tempo increase, combat feels nearly identical to Cities. Arkham Origins' biggest change can be felt under the hood though, more specifically the revamped upgrade system and the Dark Knight system. Following every battle in Arkham Asylum and City, players are rewarded with experience points. Reach the point threshold and you can choose the skill to unlock. While Arkham Asylum's skill tree appears open for player choice, it follows a more sequential unlock path. Armor Upgrade V1 goes to Armor Upgrade V3 and so on. Rocksteady would reinvent the system 2 years later in Arkham City. Arkham City follows a more pick-your-own-adventure path. In addition to a new character, a plethora of new skills were added that can be unlocked at any time. This freedom allows players to morph Batman and Catwoman into whatever they like. You'll unlock everything eventually if you do New Game Plus or do all the side quests. Warner Bros. Montreal iterated upon this system by adding a combat ranking system that provides more experience based on the player's combat variety. In parallel with this change, certain skills are locked behind the controversial Dark Knight system. The Dark Knight system is essentially a list of challenges that must be completed to unlock specific skills. Think of these as mandatory Riddler challenges if you want to unlock a costume, equipment, and other skills. The Dark Knight system is broken into 4 categories: Shadow Vigilante, Gotham Protector, Worst Nightmare, and the World's Greatest Detective. Honestly, most of these challenges are perfectly fine. Reach a certain combo number, die for X number of meters, complete a predatory encounter without being seen, and stuff like that. Where these challenges fall apart, however, are with the Worst Nightmare path. An overwhelming majority of this path's challenge require one of the limited predator encounters to be completed. Many of these challenges aren't bad per se, but Worst Nightmare 6 might be one of the most comedically bad pieces of game design that I've ever seen. To explain why this challenge is so problematic, let's quickly discuss the criteria. Completing this challenge requires players to do 4 exotic takedowns in 1 predator encounter. Vent, explosive gel, corner, and hanging ledge takedowns must all occur in 1 area. This challenge sounds fine until you realize there's only 1 predator encounter room where this can be completed. Yes, the Gotham Merchant Bank is the only area you can do this challenge. To be fair, you technically have 2 opportunities to get it done here with the Deadshot side quest. However, environments used in prior takedowns don't respond, so you can lock yourself out of this area as well. And if you didn't think it could get worse, this room is bugged, so there's a chance your progress won't save entirely. And on the topic of bugs, Arkham Origins was the buggiest Arkham game before Knight's horrendous PC launch. I've been stuck in the combat state, had infinite loading screens, crashes, broken physics, side quests that can't be completed, and more. Your mileage here will vary though. I've played this game countless times with no issues, but sometimes I just randomly get issues, so yeah, I don't know. Like I said, your mileage is gonna vary. Getting back on topic, I don't know why this challenge wasn't reworked, removed, or why this area wasn't patched, but this is what bad game design looks like. Providing players with a hyper-specific challenge that can only be completed in 1 area is dangerously stupid. This problem could have been resolved by either replacing this challenge, ensuring most of the predator encounters were designed to be completed with these 4 takedowns in mind, or allowing us to complete these tasks in the challenge maps. Instead, you run the risk of potentially soft-locking yourself until New Game Plus. That said, 1 awful challenge in a buggy area, even though it sounds crazy, doesn't make the entire system bad. Many of these are easy to do and they aren't a problem as long as they keep top of mind. Rather than criticizing the entire system, I'm more interested in the impetus of why it was employed in the first place. Did Warner Bros. Montreal think Rocksteady gave us too much freedom with skills? Did they want to prevent players from unlocking specific skills too soon? Did they want to further incentivize side quests, and what were they trying to achieve with this Dark Knight system? Ultimately, we'll never know why they used this system, but it probably wasn't well received since it never returned in future releases. Its absence in future games and all these questions contribute to this mysterious veil around the Dark Knight system. I'm actually pretty excited to read people's thoughts on this system. I expect it to be a bit more controversial like Origins boss battles. In yet another I'm sorry Arkham City came out before you moment, Origins boss fights are undeniably a step back from Cities. Not a step back in the like what happened here sense, but a step back as in City is clearly the peak of the series. Personally, I really enjoy the Deathstroke, Copperhead, Firefly, and Bane fights. Excluding the Bane fight, which mostly repeats itself, there's a ton of diversity between the bosses in this game. Each fight requires a different approach, new strategy, or sometimes new equipment that makes them fun. Some of the fights like Deathstroke have some cool choreography or Easter eggs like Bane breaking Bruce's back in Blackgate. Don't expect anything on Arkham City's Mr. Freeze level or on the same scale as the Ra's al Ghul fight. Speaking of Ra's al Ghul, another issue with Origins bosses are how inspired some of them feel. Certain bosses have the same camera work, choreography, quick time events, and sometimes sometimes even the same attacks. Origins has its own original bosses for sure, but the fact that some of these ride the fine line between homage and ripoff is really a problem. And what makes matters worse are the completely original bosses like Firefly and Bane are great. It really makes you wonder what sort of bosses WB Montreal would have developed if given more time or told not to emulate prior bosses. Origins bosses probably would have been better received if City didn't come out 2 years prior, but it is what it is. Where Origins pulls ahead of City for me though is with the story. Before talking about the story, I wanted to remind everyone that if you're enjoying the video, I'd really appreciate if you consider leaving a like and or subscribing to the channel. Thanks for your support and back to the video. Discussing stories is always weird. Sure, I could talk about the writing, pacing, exposition, conflict, and so on, but a lot of why we enjoy stories is personal preference. All of our favorite stories have aspects that we can relate to or find ourselves more interested in subjectively. Whether we want to hear it or not, relatability and self-projection are critical for our enjoyment. And personally, I find Bruce to be the most relatable in Year One comics. As we all know, Bruce Wayne is a billionaire living a lifestyle that many aspire to have. Relating to the struggles of billionaires is something 99.9% of us will never do. Yet, what happens when you write a story centered around the trauma of loss and discovering purpose? Well, now we have something to talk about. Something I haven't discussed much on this channel is my love for comics. The earliest memories I have with superheroes was watching Bruce Timm's Justice League in the early 2000s and watching Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy. I wouldn't say I was hooked after watching these, but I was definitely interested. And if you stayed up late enough, you'd catch Dragon Ball, Naruto, One Piece, Bleach, or Yu Yu Hakusho. Anyways, I really got into comics around the New 52 with Batman, Wonder Woman, and Aquaman's runs. I was like 19 at the time, the MCU felt formulaic, and I was curious if the animated stuff in comics were actually so much better. Reading the New 52 and exploring classics like The Killing Joke, Spider-Man Blue, and my all-time favorite graphic novel, Watchmen, made me finally understand the book did it better crowd. Bringing this back to Batman, Arkham Origins' narrative does an exceptional job of capturing the tone of Batman Year One. Batman Year One obviously tells the story of Bruce's first year as Batman. No Robin, no Oracle, and barely any Gordon can be found here. Arkham Origins Bruce is driven by vengeance, retribution, and uncertainty. It's clear the death of his parents is still weighing on his conscience and that he's figuring out what Batman is or what Batman means to him. Bruce figuring out whether Batman or Bruce Wayne is the mask is always a great parallel. The hesitation and trauma rears its ugly head throughout the plot. After numerous near-death experiences, Alfred confronts Bruce about the assassins, Batman's role, Bruce's anger, tells him he's in over his head and that he's worried about his life. Not only is Bruce's rebuttal exceptional, but this scene also feels like the heart and soul of the plot. Alfred, the last of Bruce's family, musters the courage to tell him he's in over his head and that he's worried about his well-being. Bruce reminds Alfred that he's not a kid anymore and that he's the only thing between the innocent and the predatory. Up to this point in the story, Bruce has seen how corrupt the police are, their unwillingness to help, their ability to be bribed for, and is aware of how institutionally broken Gotham is. And after seeing what he's seen, it's hard to say that he's wrong. Bruce's strange symbiotic relationship with Gotham is clearly established here as well as with Batman. He truly believes that it's his duty to protect Gotham even if it tears them apart. Yet, he'd probably go crazy without the city and its criminals. Arkham Origins establishes just how important Batman is to Bruce's mental well-being. The criminals, Gotham, and the role of Batman are almost therapeutic for Bruce. And while none of us can relate to this, we've all indulged in things when we're at our lowest. Running away from our problems at the bottom of a bottle, some substance, or some actions are deeply relatable. And when you realize Bruce is using Batman as an outlet for his trauma, this story becomes psychologically disturbing. None of these emotions are explicitly stated, but this small scene tells you everything you need to know about how Bruce sees Gotham, Batman, Alfred, his parents' death, and his perspective on the world. If you don't feel any pity for him at this point, I really don't know what to say. Moments like these are why I love Batman Year One stories. Before becoming a veteran Batman, Bruce was more vulnerable. He was a bit greener, he was figuring out who Batman was and how to deal with his grief. It's a story that's as dark as it is beautiful. As the game progresses, he becomes psychologically disturbed with the Joker, he begrudgingly establishes a relationship with Gordon, confronts mistakes he's made throughout the story, Alfred understands the role of Batman, and his trust is slowly restored in others. If you compare Arkham Origins Batman to Arkham Asylum Batman, the growth is evident. Seeing this transformation occur and watching Bruce become a fully realized Batman highlights how important Origins is to the overall plot. Like, can you imagine Origins Batman going through Asylum Scarecrow Scarecrow levels, they'd probably tear him apart. I honestly think seeing the transformation from year 1 to veteran Batman is super underrated in the Arkhamverse. Because of this, I really wish Warner Brothers, not that they'll be around much longer, included Arkham Origins in the Arkham Collection. It really feels like the missing piece to the Arkham series if you've played the game, but I guess it's optional at the end of the day. In addition to becoming Gotham's protector, Bruce's resolve is constantly tested. Mistakes he makes throughout the game leads to the death of innocent civilians. These deaths weigh on his conscience as he takes responsibility for each of them. He feels accountable for all the lives in Gotham and sees each death as a failure in his mission. Whether it's Commissioner Loeb's death, the Gotham City merchant bank teller, Alfred's doubts, or his parents' deaths, they're all meaningful. Beyond the mask of vengeance lies a vulnerable man with a huge heart. Bruce, in this game at least, is written with a level of humanity that we rarely, if ever, see in future Arkham games, and this humanity is on full display when he meets the Joker, but more on that in a little bit. Like I said earlier, my favorite Batman stories are year 1 stories, so my love for Arkham Origins and Matt Reeves' The Batman shouldn't come as a surprise. Both stories are deeply personal to Bruce and define who Batman and Gotham are to him. Year 1 Batman stories also function as coming-of-age stories for Bruce as well. Even though he's hard-headed, far from perfect, and can be an ass at times, it's hard not to root for the guy. If you can't sympathize for Bruce, you probably won't get much out of the story since it's largely an exploration of his psyche. The other difficult part about recommending this story is that I've read a lot of Batman comics. A lot of my praise comes from being intimately familiar with other Batman media. The best way to describe this dichotomy is with Christopher Nolan's Batman trilogy. Before criticizing these movies and making people mad, this trilogy is one of the greatest contributions to the superhero genre, period. Nolan's trilogy resides in a tier most filmmakers will never reach. They're exceptional and deserve all the praise they've received over the years. However, Batman's characterization is off. Even though Christian Bale's Batman voice is iconic, it was a strange decision nonetheless. This trilogy has also led many to believe that Batman is a man who can be reasoned with. Ben Affleck's take on Batman, while far from perfect, was also far more comic accurate. While it's completely believable that Ben Affleck's Batman would cause Dick Grayson to become Nightwing, I can't say the same about Christian Bale's. Nolan's Batman feels like someone who's terrifying but can be reasoned with. He's not as hard-headed, whereas Snyder's Batman feels like an urban myth or a legend. He's vicious, hard-headed, hurt, and needs Batman to feel sane. For these reasons, I largely prefer Snyder and Reeves' take on Batman. And if this is the first time you've heard someone prefer the other Batman over Christian Bale's, that's exactly my point. Much of my enjoyment for Origins' narrative is derived from comics. Because of this, it's hard to say whether the story will land with everyone. I'm not sure if Bruce's struggles or some of the other moments will hit as hard without the same context. Then again, this story doesn't feel contrived or make any leaps in logic, so it's probably fine as is. And I played this game before I read a bunch of comics, so I'm probably reaching. Honestly, I think Origin's story is a great introduction to the worlds of Batman. Everything you need is here, and compared to the rest of the Arkham series, has the best characterization for Bruce, Batman, the Joker, and Bane. When this game released in 2013, people were tired of the Joker. The Joker is Batman's most iconic villain and played a pivotal role in Asylum and City. You couldn't tell these stories without him, so when he, spoilers in 3, 2, 1, died at the end of City, it was bittersweet. On one hand, he's a great character and there's no one else like him. On the other hand, 3 games of straight Joker would have been a bit much. Batman has one of the most iconic cast of villains in pop culture. Variety is the spice of life, and there's plenty of it with Batman's villains. Fast forward to the Origins reveal, and everyone was excited. A year 1 story centered around Black Mask and a group of assassins hunting Batman was just what everyone wanted, until learning the Joker was disguised as Black Mask. Before praising the Joker in this game, I understand why people were disappointed. Gotham is home to mobs, famous crime families, and other corrupt members of society. Writing a mob story centered around the Falcones, Sciana's family, or even the Court of Owls, the Maronis, or anything would have been cool. Although I understand the community's frustration, there are so many highs in this story that I really don't care. Arkham Origins Joker is the definitive Arkham Joker to me. In addition to moments like messing with the assassins, murdering the electrocutioner, embracing his death as he falls from the hotel, or putting his life on the line during the Bane fight, this is the most insane Joker we've seen in the Arkham series. And these actions are psychologically disturbing and haunts Bruce. The Joker murdering his own men, his laughs, twisted beliefs, and the way he carries himself disturbs Bruce. WB Montreal decided to introduce the Joker's origin with The Killing Joke. If you haven't read The Killing Joke, it reveals the Joker's origins, how their traumatic experiences shaped them, and established how they're 2 sides of the same coin. Arkham Origins Joker feels like he's been ripped straight out of the comics. WB Montreal did an exceptional job writing him and understanding the dynamic between him and Bruce. Despite beating this game countless times in the past, this has to be one of my favorite Jokers. Compared to the rest of the series, he feels like the most twisted and lethal of the bunch until Arkham Knight, but more on that another day. I have no idea how the community feels about Origin's story in 2026, but I really don't agree with the criticism that the story is bad simply because it's another Joker story. I understand your disappointment if you wanted Black Mask as the main antagonist, but the story that is here is honestly great. It felt like WB Montreal really did their homework and read a ton of comics before writing this story. In addition to writing one of the most comic accurate Jokers, unlike Rocksteady, they actually understood Bane as a villain as well. Since Arkham Asylum, Bane has been one of the most underutilized villains. Origins Bane, and I'm sorry to keep bringing this up, feels incredibly comic accurate as well. Before Origins, we never really saw him accomplish anything. Origins retcons this by removing his intellect and making him a Venom junkie, but that doesn't mean I agree with Rocksteady's direction either. Bane is one of Batman's most iconic and interesting villains and plays a huge role in the story after he's introduced. WB Montreal went one step further by including Bird as a side quest, which doesn't go unnoticed either. This version of Bane is cunning and tactical. He plans around Batman hunting down the Joker, escapes the police, uncovers Bruce's identity through meticulously studying his tendencies, discovers the Batcave, almost kills Alfred, forces Bruce to confront his moral compass, and eventually succumbs to Venom. Bane feels like a legitimate threat in this game. He's a ruthless tactical genius who's on a similar intellectual level to Batman and pushes him to his psychological limit on multiple occasions. Before confronting the Joker at Blackgate, he practically breaks Bruce's mind before Alfred reassures him in his role. Also, not that it really means anything, but it's cool how they included Bane breaking Batman's back. It'd be cool if this scene had any ramifications, but we're in too deep to the story for Bruce fixes his back arc. Lastly, the quality of this writing and the storytelling persists throughout the entirety of the plot. We'd be here all day if I broke down all these moments in depth, so let's quickly cover my favorites. I love the Deathstroke fight. The TV spot when fighting Bane's thugs on the roof was really cool. Exploring the Joker's sleigh ride was terrifying. Seeing Harleen transform into Harley was great. Watching Bruce build a relationship with Gordon was just awesome. And seeing Bruce return to Blackgate as a fully realized Batman was awesome. Like I said earlier, I understand if you're disappointed with this story's direction, but I don't think you can call it bad either. I genuinely believe this story is up there with Arkham City's and think people should give it another chance. It's a love letter to Batman with numerous comic references and really gets us into the mind of Bruce as he becomes Batman. Although the Arkham trilogy is fondly remembered as this legendary series ushering in a new era of superhero games, it's remembered as such, a trilogy. And despite its minor issues, I think Arkham Origins should be in this conversation as well. Sure, the Dark Knight system is problematic, the bosses are a mixed bag, and there are still some bugs, and WB Montreal decided to refine City's foundation, but I don't think the entire game should be written off because of these reasons. While there are blemishes on the final product, I struggle to call the entire product bad. Some of the gameplay refinements and new enemies were awesome. Origins features the best versions of the Joker and Bane, has the most vulnerable Bruce we've seen in the entire series, features some great original boss battles, and really shows us what Batman means to Bruce in Gotham. Seeing the transformation from myth to vigilante to fully realized hero makes this a contender for one of the best Year 1 Batman stories ever. It's a story that stuck with me since I was younger and long before I knew anything about comics. Revisiting it as an adult really made me appreciate and understand parts of Bruce that most comics, cartoons, movies, or other games just haven't tackled. It's a deeply personal and psychologically disturbing story that brilliantly captures the essence of Batman. And if you don't enjoy the story, you're essentially playing a refined version of Arkham City, which is still excellent. Listen, if you hate this game or haven't revisited it since launch, I implore you to give this game another chance. If I didn't make this clear over the past 12 pages, Batman Arkham Origins is greater than the sum of its parts. I think this game is a borderline masterpiece and probably my favorite Arkham game to date. I've beaten it countless times over the years and always look forward to it whenever I revisit the Arkham games. If you're a longtime viewer of the channel, you'll know that I go into everything blind. I don't care about review scores, awards, or other people's opinions, or how celebrated a game is unless it created a genre or introduced some groundbreaking game design. And Arkham Origins is directly responsible for teaching me this lesson at a young age. Because despite the community sentiment, I really don't think that any Batman fan should miss out on this masterpiece. Hey, thanks for making it to the end of the video. So it's been a while. The channel, I promise you, isn't dead. Life has been crazy busy over these past couple of months. And then also I kind of felt like, I don't know, truthfully, I kind of lost some motivation or like drive to do YouTube, but don't worry, it's back now. I think I was just a little burned out, so yeah, no, we're chilling now, so it's all good, like I said. But before we get into the other like preamble stuff, shout out to all the domain dwellers for supporting my creative endeavors over here. If you enjoyed this video, please consider supporting my efforts by becoming a channel member or subscribing on Twitch, where you'll receive early video access, a special Discord role, access to my scripts and outlines, emotes, and more. And also feel free to join the Discord, where we talk about everything from games to TV to music to anime, or really anything else, truthfully. It really doesn't matter, we just kind of shoot the shit in there. And also feel free to catch me on Twitch or here live on YouTube, where I stream all the games that we eventually cover into videos. So before I get out of here, a couple of questions for you guys. So if you played Arkham Origins at launch, what did you think? Did you hate this game as much as, well, everybody else? Did you love this game like I did since the jump? Do you think Arkham Knight was a good successor to City? Have you revisited Arkham Origins in the past? Which is your favorite Arkham game? Is Arkham City still the best one? Would you like me to cover other Arkham games? Would you like me to cover other superhero stuff? What are your favorite Batman comics? And who's your favorite Batman actor? Again, thank you so much for making it all the way to the end of the video. Really appreciate it. Channel's back. I swear I'm not going anywhere. Just figuring out like a new way to balance the channel with all the other stuff going on in my life. And yeah, can't wait to keep making content. Can't wait to keep streaming. Can't wait to keep doing this thing. So yeah, I'll check in with y'all in the next one. Thanks for stopping by. Thanks for checking out the video. Welcome to all the new viewers, and I will catch you guys in the next one. Take it easy.